welcome to the Veloce Podcast.
Hello.
So it's Kat and Richard again, and we're on episode 26. So we thought we'd do a special because it's Le Mans this weekend, so 24-hour Le Mans. We are still going to talk a little bit about road cars and a little bit about driving, but it's very heavily featured towards Le Mans. So this is a special on that, and then actually next week we've got some really exciting news. We've got Richard Atwood joining us to do a special about what's happened at Le Mans, the results, and also his history. So he was a Le Mans winner for Porsche, a factory driver. He was a former F1 driver as well. So we'll talk about him a little bit later on, but we're dead excited about that. So we've watched the warm-up this morning, haven't we?
Let's look at that, yeah.
So lots going on, so we'll talk about all that shortly. And then the race starts at 3 o'clock, so we're very, very eager. So I'm going to try and stay up, maybe not for the whole 24 hours.
No,
we'll see how we go.
we'll see
what the
bit,
stamina's like,
yeah,
shall we?
Yeah.
But
It won't be that good.
well, yeah, maybe not for you. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Lots of Red Bull or something. So anyway, what we've been up to this week?
So apart from working on our normal stuff, we've been at Porsche, haven't we, this week? So we've done some
Yeah.
coaching for Porsche for a couple of days, and then just working on our other stuff, really.
Yeah. So been down at Porsche. You know, we've worked for. Well, I've worked for Porsche for 10 years now. How long have you worked for Porsche?
Well, the first job I did for Porsche was Generation 2 996.
Right.
Which would have been about 2002, I suppose.
Okay.
Was that or original KN, whichever came first? I'm not sure which came first.
Oh, the really ugly
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
The really ugly one.
But it was a game changer.
Oh, well,
now that's what everybody drives.
Well, to be fair, it's kind of saved the brand, didn't it? Because you had that stage where Boxster saved the brand, and then obviously as time evolved, of course, people still need practical cars. People wanted bigger cars for families. And Porsche decided, right, we're going to make a SUV. And actually, everybody said it was suicide, didn't they?
Yeah.
They thought, that's going to ruin it. It's going to ruin the brand.
And now that's all anybody makes.
Absolutely, yeah. So well, if you think Lamborghini do it, everybody does it now. And for a long time, the SUVs were the biggest seller. But I think Taycan might be the biggest seller at the moment.
Probably is at the moment. There's a lot of incentives for Taycan, though,
absolutely, is a business owner and things. And of course, with things going electric, which is something we're going to talk about shortly anyway, isn't it? With the road cars and electric and stuff. So yes, we've had some fun times there. That said, I wasn't actually in an electric car the whole time. So I was in a GT3 RS for most of it, and then a GT course, which is quite good fun because you get to drive a 997 Generation 1 GT3 RS, then a 991 Generation 2 GT3 RS. Sorry if you don't know anything about 911s because the figures, it all gets very confusing. But then we got to drive the GT2 RS, which did used to, until recently, hold the lap record around the Nürburgring, which is just a monster of a car, isn't it? Just beautiful.
It is, yeah.
So always exciting. So we thought we'd still talk a little bit about road cars because we know from what people say they find it interesting, what's on the scene, what's coming up. So we're sort of talking about the future of what's happening. So yeah.
So there's a company in Croatia called Rimac. And Rimac make basically hypercars, electric ones, really quite cool ones. But the key thing about Rimac is the guy that owns it, Mate Rimac. He's only young. He's like in his early 30s, isn't he? But he's an absolute dynamo, this guy. And Porsche was so impressed with what they're doing that they invested a load of money in his company.
Yeah.
So what they do is they build their own hypercars and they build high performance powertrains for other manufacturers, and then they consult and do lots of engineering and technology things for people like that. They're quite an amazing company.
Yeah, and how long has the company been going?
Not that long, I don't think.
I was going to say, because I'll be brutally honest, I hadn't really heard of them. I had
We think he's only 32 or 33, whatever he is.
I
So
think younger than me.
Yeah, he's a pop.
It's not fair. Why am I not doing these things?
So obviously Porsche are investing all their money into synthetic fuel, which we've talked a bit about on the podcast here.
Yeah.
But obviously with Rimac, obviously that's their powertrain bit. But the key thing that they've done is essentially Porsche and Rimac Group have bought Bugatti or taken over Bugatti from Volkswagen. So it's still Volkswagen because Porsche is the Volkswagen kind of end of it. But Rimac now own 55% of Bugatti. Yeah. Porsche own the other 45%.
Yeah.
So this is going to be, look what we can do with a powertrain is going to be the
absolutely
the
because as we said, you know, Porsche are also investing in a fully synthetic fuel with Formula One, and I think they see it very much as it's going to be, you know, half and half pretty much in our future, because electric, as good as it is probably not the only solution like we've had in the past. We've had petrol, we've had diesel, you know, we've had all sorts of things, haven't we, over the time? So the thing is, I think electric's brilliant, but they know it's not the only answer. So they're trying to fill both voids, aren't they, really, as best as possible. So they're going to really focus on the fully synthetic fuel. So hopefully things like GT cars, you know, all the stuff that we love, V12s, V8s, all the big monster engines, we can keep those and then be green, but also get ahead of the game and produce these amazingly fast supercars, you know, these hypercars, which will be electric as well. So there's two on the cards coming up, isn't there?
So they're talking about a hybrid hypercar, which can have 2,000 horsepower.
I know, when I first read it, I was like, hang on a minute, sorry? 2,000?
Yeah. I mean, personally, I don't get all that.
Really?
I don't see the point of it. Yeah, but that's my opinion on it.
Why though?
Because why do you need a 2,000 horsepower car? What use is it to anybody? And
Just
I think it's going to be.
You can sit at the pub and you can say, mate, look how quick this is.
Yeah, well, mate owns a company. But I honestly don't see the point of it. But I understand that they want to kind of showcase what they can do, and but every time somebody comes out with a new hypercar, it's got 3,000 horsepower, and it's like, well, but great, but you know, people are going to have more fun in an Alpine A110, aren't they?
Yeah,
on the road.
I know what you're saying, but I think it's evolution, isn't it? We can't stand still, and with these you know, brands like this, Porsche, Bugatti, you know, all of them, you know, part of it is they're fast. They have soul, they're sexy, and I think for me, speed is part of that. Yes, you might not be able to utilise it, especially on the road, but you could take it on a track day. You know, these cars are, I think it's just a sense of achievement, what you can achieve.
Yeah.
And you've got to remember with evolution, that, you know, the innovation of it, you know, they're able to now produce not just the power, but put it down. You know, if you think back, you know, we couldn't barely put 200 brake horsepower down without spinning the wheels. Now that's a doddle. So I see it as like, you will be able to use it. It might be a bit of a handful, but you will be able to use it and get on with it. And, you know, but of course, more in the right environment. On the road, it's going to be just enjoying the sheer kind of
I personally don't see the point.
I'm clearly not going to convince you on that.
I don't see the point. So it's like, for me, like a Carrera S is much more, or a standard Carrera is probably a much more useful car on the road than a Turbo S. You know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, okay. Fair enough. But so they're going to build two new cars, aren't they?
Yes.
So one's a hybrid hypercar, which is what we were just talking about, the 2,000 brake horsepower. But they're also going to build a full EV car as well, aren't they? And isn't this coming out by 2030?
2030, yeah.
Something like that.
So the world might have changed again by then.
Well, that's the thing. But I don't think electric's going to go. I really don't. I'm a petrol head, and I'll say to anybody that for me, the life soul of a car, I haven't quite found it in a fully electric car. Hybrid's different, but full electric car. But things are moving on, and I try and keep open-minded with it, and try these things. So I'd be really interested to see if you can get the character of a full EV car and it be a supercar and still make you smile, and not just because it's fast, everything else that comes with it.
Because that's the problem at the moment, is they're just fast.
Yeah, it's like a one-trick
okay,
pony.
right, okay, you've done that, you've said that almost. You know, it's like, you know, you drive Tesla, for example. You drive a Tesla, it's really ridiculously fast, and you're like, okay, but what else do you do?
Yeah,
well, fast. Well,
it's
get
like,
that.
A lot of clients, regular clients that I have, or we have, you know, have had Taycans, and unfortunately have handed them back pretty quick, because they just kind of got used to, well, they got used to the power, and then it was like, now what?
Now what?
You know, now what? But it's actually a really good car. It's just very different. And I suppose the problem is we're older. Youngsters coming up won't know any different. No. But I do honestly think petrol will be here to stay, but it's going to change. It's going to be this, like we said, this fully synthetic fuel, and perhaps with hydrogen. And I think they're investing a lot in it, so we can have two angles, two elements, you know, options for these cars. So that's what I hope for. And I really strongly believe that's where it's going. Porsche are very, very savvy. They've jumped on board with this with Bugatti. They've jumped on board with Formula One with the fully synthetic fuel. So I think, yeah, they often lead the way with these things. They make big, bold, statements like they did with the KN, and so on. And I think others will follow suit. So, so have a little look at that and see what you guys think to that. It's been in a lot of the magazines and things. So yeah, have a look. So with the driving bit, we've decided rather than talking roady stuff or road and track, this is purely track based. And we're talking about rolling starts because in Le Mans, it's traditionally now a rolling start, isn't it? But it didn't always used to be the case.
No, so basically what they used to do, and it seems bizarre really that they would start a 24-hour race with a foot running race.
Yeah.
So you think, well, I know it's the point of this, but they used to obviously line them all up, and they do it at Goodwood still.
Yeah.
Where they, they line them all up. And if you ever go to Goodwood, along the pit start finish straight, there's a load of circles painted, and that's where the drivers stand for the start. Right, go, and you have to run across, jump your car, and off you go.
Yeah.
And that was the case at Le Mans until 1970.
Yeah, 1970.
And basically what happened in 68, they obviously seatbelts were in sports cars then.
Yeah.
And somebody had set off, Willie Moraes, I think, had set off, hadn't strapped himself in, had a big shunt, hurt himself.
Yeah.
And it finished his career. So Jackie Hicks, who was also Belgian, thought, well, I'm not doing that. So what he did, everybody ran across the road and he sauntered across deliberately at protest and set off last.
Yeah, almost got run over.
Nearly got run over because, of course, he sauntered across. Everybody else got out of the cars and legged it. But of course, was on the opening lap of that race in '69, somebody was killed because they hadn't done their seatbelts up.
Yeah,
so he was absolutely right.
So in 1970 it started where they were already in the cars, but they hadn't done rolling starts at that point. So I believe in 1971 is when it then went to a rolling start.
Yeah.
So a big part of the rolling start is safety.
So I was going to say, just before you say the film Le Mans, the Steve McQueen Le Mans, that's based around the 1970 race.
Okay.
So the start of that, they're all in the cars, but it's a standing start, and that was the only time they ever did it.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you could ask the question, well, why is not everything a rolling start? But I think with endurance races, 24 hours, you've got a long race. The last thing you want is to stall on the line or somebody stall on the line, you get wiped out and game over before it's even begun.
Yeah.
I mean, the prep for 24-hour Le Mans is amazing. The amount of work and hours prior to the event.
Well, the amount of running they've done this week is astonishing.
Exactly. So it would be absolutely soul destroying to not even start. So I think that was a real big reason, obviously safety. But there's other perks to it, isn't it? So they can drivers can get the tyres even warmer, brakes warmer as well. And I think I've only done one proper rolling start in a car, because karts is rolling starts, funny enough. And I did a rolling start in Formula 3 at Belgium, at Spa. And actually, I didn't get anywhere near as nervous as I do at a standing start. So I even found, as a driver, it was easier to deal with because it's less stressful, because the biggest stress is a race start, isn't it? Because so much can go wrong. You might stall it, bad start, whatever it might be. Whereas once you're going, you're going. And in this situation, when the red lights go out, boom, you go.
You're away.
Yeah, you're away. So,
and of course, we talk about IndyCar a lot. They're all rolling to America. They don't really go for standing starts in the States.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's safer, but then they hurtle around ovals at 200 miles an hour.
So it's not that safe, but but no, fascinating. So we just thought, I know it's not going to help people on the road, obviously rolling starts and even on track, but it just gives you an insight driving wise why there are rolling starts. But no, it's not with everything. Some formulas do rolling starts, but not all. I guess there's still the argument, certainly for shorter races as well, the challenge of getting off the line, not making a mistake. And as a spectator, it's interesting, isn't it? Because they could make a mistake or just make a bad start, and that changes then who gets into turn one first. And so I can see arguments both ways, but I definitely think for endurance racing,
makes sense.
24 hours, you don't want to take that risk at the start, do you?
No.
So moving on to obviously motorsport, which is all Le Mans for this episode, because we wanted to make it a special. So we've had practice, haven't we? And there's been quite a bit of running this week already.
Yeah, so they seem to do lots of practicing, then they do qualifying, and then they do hyperpole, and then they do more practicing, and then they do a warm-up. It's like the things never stop going round.
But it's great because, well, as a driver, my dream's always been to race at Le Mans.
Oh, me too, yeah.
And I really honestly hope at some point I get to do it. I think Le Mans is just one of those special races. The atmosphere.
The best motor race in the world.
And the atmosphere is just unbelievable because of all that build-up. But the seat time you get, if you think compared to most racing, there isn't really much seat time at all. And in this, it's endless. You're in the car so
I've had enough of
much.
it.
So there's quite a few categories, isn't there, Rich?
Yeah, so there's 4 classes, isn't there, basically?
A newer category, haven't they, with the hypercars now?
Yeah, because as always happens in sports car racing, the top class gets more and more expensive because the manufacturers think, right, we want to win it, so they throw a load of money. So another manufacturer comes in and thinks they throw even more money at it, and it gets more and more expensive. So there's been lots of cycles of the top class.
Yeah.
So we've just come out of a few years of LMP1.
Yeah.
Which was dominated by Audi at first, wasn't it? And then Porsche and now Toyota. So we've now gone to hypercar. So I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to make, because obviously in America they have IMSA, which is the equivalent, the American equivalent.
Yeah.
So I think what they were trying to do, Le Mans, was try and get a top class, which is like big sports cars, that would run on both sides of the Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they've kind of got there.
Yeah.
Time will tell, I suppose, really.
But it seems to be that we're coming into a very sweet special spot of sports car racing, whether it's IMSA or WEC with 24-hour Le Mans. We're getting big manufacturers, Ferrari. Oh gosh, there's so many that have come into it now. Also, I think that's because of the budget caps in Formula One. Some of these manufacturers have more money to spend, so they're coming into sports cars, which is brilliant for us. The more we get to see, the more racing with manufacturer outfits, the better. Because at one point, LMP1 lost its way a bit, didn't it? Because for a while it was Toyota.
Just Toyota, yeah.
And the thing is, even for Toyota, that must be a bit sad because you want that competition. That's part of it. And you don't want people to say, well, you want it because there's nobody in it. You don't want... It's still an achievement to do 24 hours, don't get me wrong. But you want to be racing against others. And that's really coming back now, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Really coming back. So who, on that note, who's on pole?
Toyota, yeah. And it's the number 7 Toyota that seems to be always on pole at the moment.
Yeah.
And then breaks down or crashes or,
Conway, Kobayashi and Lopez. I've put it here in my notes. Can they finally win?
Well, I mean, let's see. I mean, they've had the only opposition they've had, like you say, really has been the other Toyota.
Yeah.
But the strong thing really in LMP, hypercar, sorry, is Alpine.
Yes.
And Alpine are massively determined to win it, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they're gonna. I think they're actually running an LMP1 car.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but they're building a hypercar.
Yes.
Yeah, they're sort of evaluating it at the moment. Of course, if
but
they
they're
win
going
them
to compete in the same category.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
so they've technically they've equalised the performance like they do.
Yeah,
which they're good at.
Balance of performance. Yeah, they've sorted that.
Yeah.
So
it's been quick. The Alpine's been quick, hasn't it?
Alpine's obviously in Formula One as well. So their plan is they're running quite a different strategy, aren't they? So they can only run 75 litres of fuel. So for drivers, there are 3 drivers. You can do a minimum of 40 minutes, a maximum of 2 hours for a driver, but your restriction is still fuel. So you could bomb round for 2 hours, but the car's not going to manage to do 2 hours without a fuel stop. So Alpine have decided they're going to try and do the longest stints they can fuel-wise.
Yeah, which they reckon the ultimate for a hypercar is 12 laps.
Yeah.
Le Mans, which is about 70 miles, I think.
Yeah.
So
that's what they're aiming
1,000 horsepower cars drink a lot of fuel.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's their plan.
So they're aiming for about 12 laps. Most will come in, 9, 10, that kind of thing. And it doesn't sound like much, does it? But of course, on a massive lap, that makes a difference. So their strategy is very different to Toyota. But their aim is let's go long. And they obviously have the faith with that.
Absolutely. It might be the number 7 Toyota think, well, we're just going to go flat chat then. Yeah. So they do 9 laps, but they've pulled a lap out, if you see what I mean. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see. But there's been nothing in it in the times in practice.
Which is great. Anybody who watches motorsport, you want it to be close, don't you? It's so important that it's close. And it's great with the hypercar, category that it is close. There's more competitors in it. This is what we want to see, isn't it? But there's also talk, Alpine are very, very strongly trying to persuade Fernando Alonso to come back next year, because of course he's racing for Alpine in Formula One. He's really found his mojo again in F1. I mean, the last race, we spoke about it, didn't we, on the pod, but his ability to hold up Hamilton, it just shows his world-class, capabilities, I suppose. And they see it as he's the best man for the job to do the Le Mans, because he's already done it and he's won it.
Yeah.
And he's done it with Toyota, hasn't he? So he will also have a lot of knowledge about Toyota, the strategies, what they've done. So there's loads that Alpine can get from that. So it'd be really interesting to see. And obviously this is coming off the back of, they just had their first win, didn't they, in Formula One with Ocon?
Yeah, which is the first all-French win since 1983.
I know, which is mad, isn't it? I didn't realise it.
So engine, chassis and driver are all French. This last time was 1983.
So if you think they won that, so they'll be seriously hoping they can get this.
And they've pretty much got a French lineup, haven't they? So they've got Negrão, who's Brazilian, Lapierre and Vavier, who are all French.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, I'm a bit torn, because obviously Toyota do win all the time, but not the number 7 car. The number 7 car is always blisteringly quick, and something always seems to happen.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel, I'd love to see Mike Conway finally win. for a time, because he hasn't, has he? He's never had a chance of doing it.
No.
So we'll see. But
so another car in that, sorry, I meant to say is Glickenhaus.
Yeah.
Which is a guy who's movie director.
Not music.
Not music, movie, film director. And he wants to win Le Mans as a privateer, because nobody's done that for a very long time. So he's kind of come in, built his own cars, and so it'll be interesting to see how Glickenhaus
And how quick have they been?
They've been there and thereabouts.
Okay.
Yeah, they've not been far off. They're not like seconds off or anything,
Yeah, so, and of course in a 24-hour race, it's not just about pace. Obviously, you need to be there or thereabouts, as Richard's just said.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily have to be the fastest to win, because so many things can happen at Le Mans. 24 hours, you only need to, have an issue with a back marker or a slight failure that you have to limp back to the pits, lose a load of time, whatever it might be. So, sorry, I just kicked the camera then. So it'll be interesting to see, won't it? So he's a billionaire, isn't he, or is he a millionaire?
I think he's a billionaire.
Yeah, well, he must be to run all this,
so.
I suppose.
Yeah.
So with 3 drivers, so
we'll
we'll certainly see. So then we've got LMP2, haven't we? So sorry if this is all confusing, but we're gradually trying to sort of go through it like they would do normally. So your hypercar is your number 1 class, let's say.
You've essentially got to build your own car for hypercar.
Yeah, and then you've got LMP2.
Well, you buy a car. You can buy a chassis, buy an engine, off you go.
Yeah.
So you've got to have 3 drivers. One of them has to be an amateur. So you can't have 3 pros in there. So, but there are some strong drivers in this, aren't there?
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Paul di Resta, you've got Anthony Davidson, you've got Robert Kubica.
Yeah.
There's some, there's some
Felix
really
da Costa,
strong drivers. Felix da Costa.
All unbelievably established drivers.
Yes, and again, very, very close. There's like fractions of a second covering the top 10.
It was something like, now I could be slightly out here, but something like a 10th. Covered the top 7 or something.
Bearing in mind, it's a 6 mile lap.
Yeah, and for anybody, if
not 6 mile laps, isn't it? 9 mile lap, isn't it?
if you've driven around Le Mans, or you've been and watched, or you've done it on a simulator, if you haven't, definitely have a go on a simulator, even if it's just on a PlayStation or Xbox or something. Just try around. You won't believe how long it is as a lap. So when you're talking a 10th, and if you think how long it takes to start and stop a stopwatch, a 10th is nothing. So it's amazing how close it is. So very, very tight field, which hopefully will make it incredibly exciting. But it also has been exciting for perhaps the wrong reasons.
Yes. Remember when we went to Carlin, they had an LMP2 car in there, and the guy said they're an absolute monster to drive.
Yeah.
And it's so brutally fast.
Hasn't it? Because as we said, they've already done a lot of running and warm up and so on this morning. And it's been a bit of a shunt fest, hasn't it? To say the least. So there's been many incidents. One of the cars, so what's it, the G Drive 26 car, isn't going to compete.
No,
is it?
So they stuffed it on like Tuesday or Wednesday this week, and had to put a new tub. So completely brand new rebuild of the car.
Yeah.
Did all the qualifying and everything else, and then it got crashed again on Thursday night, I think, Thursday night or Friday night. And they were like, right, enough's enough now.
Well, they
all the
just
mechanics probably threw their tools down and thought,
Yeah.
right, that's
Well,
enough of that.
basically, they can't get it ready in time. So, what a gutting feeling. I mean, for the whole team, for the drivers, you know, all that prep build up. Like I say, it's like all year you're building up for the 24-hour Le Mans. I know they race a series in wet anyway, but you know, there's all this build up. It's a massive, massive deal to get there and qualify, get the opportunity to do it. And then for that to happen is just soul destroying. So I think, yes, it's going to be a real shame for them and sad to not see them start it. But another person, interestingly, who's come along for their debut is Robert Kubica.
Robert Kubica, yeah, he nearly had a big shunt this morning. Dropped a wheel on the grass and
he had a big spin, didn't
he was lucky not to hit anything.
Was he? Yeah.
But I mean, obviously he's quick. They're leading the LMP2 World Championship at the moment.
Yeah.
Him and his two teammates.
Oh, he's an incredibly quick driver. Not Fernando Alonso, sorry. Lewis Hamilton said he found he was the most fierce competitor in the junior ranks coming up. Unfortunately for Robert, he's had obviously an injury. I think that if you actually watch him in the car, you can barely use one of his hands. And these cars are so physical, just like Formula One cars, you know, the aero, and also the stints you're doing, the fatigue, you know, the physical elements on your body. It's astonishing what he can still do and to be so quick. So he did have a spin this morning, but he is incredibly quick. So I'm really rooting for him because he's done other 24-hour races, not at Le Mans though. So this is his debut, isn't it?
Yes, and I think don't think he's actually done a 24-hour race. So I think
What you
he
mean
tried
is
to do
that he hasn't
Daytona and it broke before it got to the line, and
Okay.
he's had a lot of unlucky
Well, I just think he's
runs
an
at
unlucky
24
bloke,
hours. Yeah, I
to
think
be
he
honest.
is. Yeah,
He's one of these where everybody loves him.
Yeah.
Everybody. I've never heard a bad word about Robert Kubica. Everybody loves him, but he's just been incredibly unlucky. Incredibly so. Do you remember when we went to Poland and he was
everywhere?
Yeah, not him personally, but he was on everything. He's such an icon, isn't he? So it'd be lovely to see him do well. It's going to be really hard for me supporting people because there's too many people I like.
Yeah, we just enjoy the race.
But yeah, absolutely. So so a bit close. So if we move on then, we've got the Gte Pro. So that's the next one down. So of course now we're moving away from prototypes now.
Yeah.
To things you'd recognise, let's say Porsches, Ferraris, Corvettes, that kind of things. Aston, yeah. So
this is normally you'll get 7 or 8 of them going around in a train for 8 hours.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's brilliant. The GT racing's fabulous.
Well, it's like 24 hours and you still don't know who's going to win.
No.
You think, what? And they literally are, because they're pros. So they're all pros in this category, Gte Pro, of course, by the name. You know, they rarely make a mistake. It happens, but rarely. So they're just in a train, aren't they, the entire time? But a Porsche's put it on pole, hasn't it?
Yeah, so the number 91 Porsche, Vantor, Parent and Martin have stuck it on pole.
Yeah,
but their quickest driver,
close, right?
Yeah, again, very close. So you've got Ferrari second and Corvette third. But
yeah, Porsche's
quickest man, they're racing the hole, is Quick Kevin Estre. And he crashed it in the hyperpole.
Yeah.
And he's gutted, you can imagine, you know.
Yeah.
And he's also leading the World Championship.
Really nice bloke as well, he is.
Yeah.
But there's questions, has it knocked his confidence?
They've had to rebuild, they had to re-chassis the car overnight, you know, so he's, you know.
Because he's sort of nicknamed Quick Kev, you know, he's unbelievably quick. Very, very quick in the wet. So you'd normally expect to probably see him on pole, really. But yeah, unfortunately, all went a bit wrong.
So they're a bit on the back foot on the number 92 car.
Yeah, but fingers crossed, you know, they're out there. It's 24-hour race, you know, so hopefully they'll still be in the mix. It's nice to see, obviously, you know, Ferrari and Corvette. It's nice just to see the top 3 are all different manufacturers, and this is where the balance of performance, they've worked it really well. Whereas the previous year, it didn't work very well. They kind of penalised Porsche a lot. But this year it seems to have worked quite nicely, hasn't it? So,
it has, yeah.
So hopefully that means for the races they don't alter the balance of performance, because they did do that last year, and poor Porsche went from being the quickest to the slowest. So, but overall they're really good with balance of performance. So fingers crossed that will carry on for this year. And balance of performance, all that means is they just try and equal it, don't they?
Yes.
So whoever has an advantage. I know it sounds mad because you think, well, surely if they've worked hard and got an advantage, they should be allowed that. but they like to keep it close to keep the racing close. So they're
Simple as
obviously
that.
all very different cars. You know, if you think of a Corvette, Ferrari, Porsche, they're all radically different. So they try and equal them out as best as possible. So you get to see a really good close race ultimately. So so we'll see what happens there, but they're all very strong factory drivers, aren't they?
Yeah, some good lineups.
We'll see.
Yeah.
So then the next category down is GTE Am.
So this is the gentleman driver class, really.
Yeah, but you still have a pro, don't you?
You're allowed one pro basically in the car.
And then 2 that aren't. So
Yes.
you got to have 1 bronze driver.
So that's the lowest classification you can get.
Sorry, apologies. Yes, so you have bronze, silver, gold and platinum, don't
Yes.
you? Yes, that's right. So platinum's normally what you'd have in the GTE Pro.
Yeah.
So they're the pro guys.
And the hypercars and all that.
That. So yes, you must have 1 bronze driver, and then you're not allowed to go any higher with the other driver than silver.
Yeah.
Now, it's a real question of how do you get, you know, classed as a bronze or a silver or whatever. It's very much done on what you've raced, how long you've raced for, and what you've achieved, really, isn't it?
Yes, and age as well, I think. So once you get over 40, I think you drop a category, don't you, and stuff.
Is
so,
that right?
Yeah,
I
you
didn't
do,
know
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, is that okay?
40 or 45, you drop a category, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. And actually, there are some drivers that don't want to be a platinum, because if you think about it, if you could be a silver, there's so many people that need a silver. You know, there's basically less slots, isn't there, in platinum, you know, classes as such. Whereas there's more slots for bronze and silvers and things because they need to have those drivers. So you're better off being a really good bronze or silver and trying to keep that, aren't you, really? Because you'll get more opportunities off the back of it. Well, potentially anyway, off the back of it. But yeah, fascinating. So yeah, it's more of a gentleman driver class. I shouldn't say gentleman because of course you can have ladies, but
yes.
That's sort of the
But the
nickname
pole
of
car
it,
has got a
let's
chap
say.
in it who's 74. And he's the oldest driver, and that's the car that's on pole. 74 years old.
So is that the oldest driver ever to
have
race
raced
at
at
Le
Le
Mans?
Mans, yeah.
74.
That's awesome, isn't it?
Well, that makes me feel better because I keep banging on about age. They don't have to be 12, you know, to race these things. And doesn't that prove the point?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And because I think if you remain at it from a young age and you continually do it and you keep fit and you keep pushing, you know, I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I know your body will slow down, but I do think with, you know, motorsport, it's not like some sports. I think if you keep those, you know, the muscle memory there as such, you can sustain that. But yeah, so I thought that was brilliant. So they're going to change it, aren't they? So both GT classes will change.
So they're a thing called GTE at the
2024.
moment, which is almost a Le Mans specific thing, isn't it? So they can be quite tricky. So things like the 911 is a mid-engined car rather than rear-engine, not because of dynamics, but because of downforce.
Yeah.
So when they go to GT3, it'll go back to being rear-engined.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's a good idea in some respects.
Yeah, it's all about costs, keeping the costs
exactly,
down. Exactly,
because
and
you
they run
get
GT3 and everything, can't you, as well?
Yeah, and you'll get more people in it. And for us, well, firstly, I want to be back out racing, so that's good for me. But also, I think in general, it's better for spectators. You've got more manufacturers in it, more drivers. You know, you want to see a nice big field of cars, don't you? So that's sort of our roundup of what's happened so far, because of course we've only seen practice, warm up, what's about to happen at 3 o'clock. Obviously it all kicks off, but we've got another special coming up after the race. So next week we've got Richard Atwood coming on. Now, I don't know if you want to explain a bit about Richard.
So Richard was the first man to win. Yeah, was the first man to win Le Mans for Porsche. Him and Hans Hermann.
Yes.
In 1970, so we'll get him on talking about that. He was also a frontline Formula 1 driver, so he drove for PRM, he drove for Lotus, finished second at Monaco one year, and he also drove for Ferrari. You know, huge amounts of experience and some fabulous stories. And he's still as passionate, loves his motor racing today.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So we'll hopefully be able to go through what happens at Le Mans this weekend with him, because he'll have watched the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And then we'll talk a bit about him and his history and.
Yeah, because quite often he'll be able to give us an insight in a different way as well. So our plan is, so we'll have Richard on, and we're going to gradually announce the other drivers that we're going to get them on together, but we've decided to split it, let's say. So we're going to have Richard on, going to talk about what's happened in the race and talk about him, his history, his love of motorsport, all of that. And then we've also got some other Le Mans drivers coming on, some previous, some current. so we get a real insight into that and the world of sports car racing, because of course we talk a lot about Formula 1 and IndyCar, and of course we're going to have an IndyCar driver coming on very soon as well, but it's nice to, I think it's coming into a sweet spot of sports cars, so it'd be really nice to give people hopefully that insight into that world, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our plan. So thanks so much for watching or listening, on both. Really appreciate it, and thank you, by the way, also social media, we put out a lot of the quiz questions, and loads of people have been getting involved in that, which has been fantastic. We're still going to release some more of those, and we're going to think of other things that we can do to get you guys and girls engaged as well. But any feedback, as always, feel free to get in touch on any of the social media side of things, or you can email us directly. Thanks a lot, guys. Speak to you soon.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.